sounds like you are for leaving some sort of troop presence in Afghanistan if you were in charge.
Yes.
And what would that look like, and what would their mission be, and how long would you anticipate?
Well, the first thing you want to have not done is give Bagram Air Base up. Prisoners were as well. You had 2 runways, not 1. You had an outsert that you would have another ability to move people out. For the last year, we had a small number of troops, less than that we have today there, and you didn't for 18 months have 1 casualty. You had those who were Christians, those who had helped us in Afghanistan, not being beaten or beheaded. You have comedians not being killed at that time too. You actually had some peace in the country. I think that was working. For the president, and this is why we should have hearings on this, what information was given, who knew what, when, and for the president to stand just approximately a month beforehand and tell us it would not fall, that it's this 300,000 strong military, but to criticize those in the Afghan who've lost thousands in the military fighting with us, to pull out the air cover, I think those are the things we should have some hearings about to get to the answer that we never make this type of mistake again.
Was President Trump wrong to agree to withdraw troops?
Well, President Trump had actually decreased the troops from 15,000 to 2,500 and not 1 casualty. President Trump's...
But there was a deal to withdraw.
It wasn't this deal. I mean, Mike Pompeo and President Trump have been very clear about this. Even the former Secretary of Defense have been very clear about this. There were requirements that had to be met. You watch time and again, whenever the Taliban did not meet the requirement, there was ramifications for that. Quick, swift, and very difficult. The other thing that you'd have to think about in the Taliban, they watched this president time and again with a crisis. Back away from Putin, ransomware, pay it, China, provide them. I just read a report before I walked out here. Allow Huawei chips to be sold. The idea that Russia could have their pipeline, but America cannot. I felt they think they were more emboldened. And as they moved city to city, I know for a fact that President Trump wouldn't allow that. That didn't meet the requirements. And for the President Biden to sit back in an interview and say nothing went wrong, that's a telltale line. And that you plan for every scenario, well, whoever started planning this should have stopped when this scenario started. Lives are going to be lost. The president has now ruined our reputation on the world stage, not for a week, but for decades to come. Our own allies are criticizing us. Our own allies who are sitting there defending us because America was attacked, asking us to extend the deadline so they can get their own citizens home, not for any other reason. And the allies that we have fought for years together, he said no and yes to the Taliban. So no, none of that would have happened under a different administration. And yes, that was a failure. One of the biggest failures I watched from a foreign policy in my lifetime. And it's going to do a lot of damage to us. Not just in a short run, but a long run. What does China believe now about Taiwan? What does Russia think about the Baltics or Eastern Europe? And not only when you talk, Jake, about the base, think of the location of where it is. The president talks about looking over, having eyes ahead of time. That base proximity to Russia, to China, to Pakistan. The idea of terrorists coming again from Afghanistan. You now, when you move people out, you don't have the intel.
But the administration says that it's they don't have a capacity problem, and Bagram is 2.5 hours from Kabul, and they say, in their estimation, there's very little strategic value in getting people out to keeping it open. They say that's their estimation. They say most of the people they're trying to evacuate are in Kabul.
They also said the Afghan government.
But on that point, though,
they've also said you could get to the airport.
Fine, they've been wrong on some things. They've been right on some things. But
no, they have not been right at all. And think about Bagram. You have 2 runways. You have 1 runway. Do you think every single American is sitting in Kabul? Bagram is not that far from Kabul. Why wouldn't you have 2 different options? You have other people throughout this country. And if you built a military base there, where we had sustained it for 20 years, Why wouldn't you maintain it? We keep a base in Cuba today. Why wouldn't we keep a base for forward looking? Why wouldn't we keep a base in that geographical region of the world? Why would we release it? Why, if there was not one casualty in the last 18 months and only 2,500 troops had to be there, we were securing what we need to do. Why would you give it up? And first and foremost, if you were going to draw down, the Taliban fights in the summer and hibernates in the winter. If you were going to allow the Afghan government to sustain itself, why would you draw down when the Taliban is at its height? Why? Who made that decision? And why would you remove the military before you remove the civilians? And why would the president just days before says he's going to maintain normal operations in the embassy? How could we be that far wrong? So no, they didn't get anything right. And no, when he stands before us and tells us it's safe to go, and then you find out 30 minutes later it's not, I don't believe it was right to close the base. And you ask me a question, I would have kept it open. And I would have kept open. It gives you more options.
If you're holding next year, would you want to see a select committee look into this?
Look,
Just do it all in one?
No, we have a tremendous benefit here, not just on a Republican side, but a Democrat side too, of a number of members who served in the military from all aspects. I mean, if you just listen to the newest member of Congress, Jake Elsley, this guy flew F-18s. He didn't just fly F-18s, and you know who his wingman was? Mike Garcia off the aircraft carrier. But he also went into Afghanistan as a targeting person. He did it with Morgan Luttrell, who happens to be running for Congress. Twin brother of Mark Luttrell, who Morgan was a Navy SEAL. Normally, you only go for about 3 days. They got stuck there for 30 days, ran out of food in 6. These are people that have been there. You have Navy SEALs. You have from Brian Mass, who lost his legs, to Dan Crenshaw. You have Crow on the other side of the aisle. We have people who have such expertise, who are on the ground and knowing. I would take it through all committees, from Armed Services to Foreign Affairs to Intel, and I would change Intel Committee back to the purpose of what their responsibility was. They have a responsibility of overseeing the agencies. But what did they do? They turned it to look within. They spent it as a political arm. Impeachment has never gone through the Intel Committee until the Democrats made it political. How much time had Adam Schiff spent of looking around the world of what his responsibility is? And when you're on the Intel Committee, you learn things that other members do not know. But he spent all of his time on politics. So yeah, I would look at that of what failure he created too.